Of course. So what's your look on what's coming? Like recession, energy crisis, it's a lot of volatility in the market. What do you expect end of the year 2023?
Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of years, hasn't it? You know, you sort of have this time where your calendar's filled up in 2020, and then, you know, the pandemic starts, your calendar is empty, and then we had this time where in the second half of 2020, we had the best performance we ever had, and then something magical happened. We had the best performance we ever had again in 2021, and I think the good news is that in 2022, we're seeing that all of those travelers that tried our category for the first time during the pandemic, they're coming back again and again and again, largely thanks to the performance and the grounding that the property managers have been providing. So we're thrilled with that. Now, of course, looking forward, you know, we're in an interesting spot. You know, I think the good news that most people have seen on the screen today during a variety of other presentations is that the ADRs are staying the same. And, you know, that remains pretty durable. I think that, you know, we're all sort of keeping an eye on that to actually take a look and see what happens. But, you know, I think the idea is, you know, people are going to continue to travel. And you know, I think that at times, like in 2008, when we saw that there was a financial crisis, we found that at times what people would do is rather than staying at, you know, the King Suite, instead they'd stay in a normal room. Or maybe actually for our category, rather than going on a long international trip, maybe they'd all go to a vacation rental, which actually has a better value for the traveler. So I'm feeling great. I'm feeling great about what's to come.
Okay. Would you say, so you don't see like a drop or it's going to be a slow?
Nah, I mean, I think we all have to keep an eye on it, but I don't think that there's going to be any crash landing here. I think there's just too much momentum behind the category.
In terms of growth, obviously you studied in American company, you big in the US. What's the situation in Europe? What are your plans to grow?
Yeah. Now, I mean, I think the great news for us in Europe is we actually have a lot of supply. We have a lot of supply, and we have James Cassidy's team, and you know, calling out Paola and others that are absolutely awesome account managers that are dedicated to all of you to help your supply get online and be, you know, sort of as ready as humanly possible. So supply story, like, we got this. The thing we got to do is we got to bring more relevant demand, and I view that almost really as like a three-pronged effect, right? So we have legacy brands like Abertel and like Vrbo Direct in Germany, which have terrific local followings in those countries, and a lot of the corridors for that are to Southern Europe, so that's great for a lot of you here in this audience. That's only kind of the tip of the iceberg, though, because what we're doing as a company is we're really working on converging our platforms so that hopefully we really start to see a lot more production on Expedia.com and Hotels.com and all these other brands that are traditionally thought of as hotel sites. The third piece, which is also kind of a wild card, is we have a whole B2B distribution business. So, you know, at times we're going to provide supply to other players, and they're going to ultimately book, you know, drive demand to our properties and drive bookings for you. So we view it as an ecosystem across a variety of brands that really is a step change in demand for what we mean in Europe.
So you're leveraging basically on your inventory?
Yeah. Our inventory, a variety of brands, some of which are part of Expedia and some of which aren't.
Okay. Interesting. So in terms of tech, I mean, let's divide this block in a couple of questions. Number one, you've got a massive volume of communications, and we hear it from you, Expedia Group. I mentioned before, like how are you, and then we talk about a unified platform, so you're saying that, is that a challenge? How are you dealing, because again, there's that flow of communication and that in those volume and scales?
Yeah, I think we all want a more frictionless experience. However, we also want to have the opportunity to answer travelers' questions to ultimately put them in the right house. So I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide a lot more information and content and house rules and amenities, etc., right up front to the traveler, so that perhaps we can cut down some of that friction. And then ultimately, like, the way we look at it is, we want those communications to stay on the platform for two reasons. We want them to stay on the platform because ultimately it helps us with all customer service matters, and transparently, we want to keep it on the platform so that it doesn't leak off the platform and we can collect our fees. That's probably refreshing to hear. And then, of course, what we're also committed to doing is we're committed to, after the booking occurs, we give you contact information. Because we understand that part of our job isn't necessarily just to drive the next booking to our platform, but we help you build your traveler database so that you can do your direct bookings too. Like, there's certain people that get up on stages at conferences and they talk about the book direct loop, and I think they're anticipating me to be like, I'm not a fan of that. Like, we've made a lot of money helping property management companies build direct business, and we're super comfortable with that.
Okay. It sounds like a massive work. I'm not sure when you saying like unified platform, especially when you're a global company and you got that amount of inventory. So why was that decision made? And what was the stage now? Where you at now?
Yeah, and I think there's a little bit of like retro thinking here, right? So Expedia Group buys then HomeAway in 2015, but the technology's still all different. And we've been piping over vacation rental inventory from the HomeAway stack to the Expedia points of sale for actually quite a long time. We've actually been doing it since even pre-acquisition. But the problem is, when you have messy pipes that are talking to different stacks, you're still doing a lot of like surfacing of vacation rental inventory in a way on a website that's really built for hotels. So the idea is that we're going to build, a platform that truly enables us to access the right hotel travelers and the right vacation rental travelers all in one place, all across all the brands. And that's hard work. They're smashing together tech that we've worked on for years. But it's going to have all sorts of great effects. The first one is just the ability to book vacation rentals across a variety of sites. That's the first one. The second one that's worth mentioning is all of the hotel-like promotions and capabilities that we're going to bring to the traditional Vrbo VR. This is refundable rate plans, flexible cancellation policies, seasonal cancellation policies, promotions. I mean, all of these things that will be additional levers that we haven't necessarily delivered to our vacation rental partners. Last thing worth mentioning is the loyalty program, which is going to be across all the Expedia brands, which enables our travelers to earn and burn across all of our websites. And as somebody who traveled and stayed at hotels for 9 years when I was in consulting, when I went on vacation, the last thing I ever wanted to do was stay in another hotel. So I think that this is going to be a big unlock in terms of demand for our category. You asked a question on timeline. Now I think, if I gave you anything specific, I think that our technology and product people would probably like zap me with a shock collar or something to the effect. But I can tell you that all of those things that I mentioned will happen next year.
Okay. It's pretty close, but again, it's a massive amount of work. But so you mentioned loyalty. You have that loyalty program. I think that's going to be impressive to see how you leverage these 145 million. You already have
6.5 million visitors on the Expedia brands every day, and then 154 million logged in loyal travelers.
And the idea is that they can share all those benefits across all the
one loyalty program, like right now. For years, there's been the Hotels.com plan, there's been the brand Expedia plan, and Vrbo's had nothing. And the idea is it's going to be one plan across all of it. And that's going to unlock all kinds of things. It's going to unlock earn and burn. It's going to unlock the ability to actually have member-only deals to actually target specific travelers. And then I think there's this additional, more macro opportunity for us, which is if there's a loyalty program, more people will log in. If more people log in, we can start gathering data about them and surfacing the best properties possible based upon their needs. So we show you, we find out that you stay only at Ritz-Carlton and Four Seasons and the nice places you like to stay at, and I'll show you the equivalent vacation rental that you might find interesting.
How did you know?
Based on the history.
Okay. Then I have two questions here. So you create that efficiency across the whole Expedia group, which makes a lot of sense. But then I see two challenges as well. Number one is like, how do you see is legislation going to be a challenge? And we got a short-term initiative, as we mentioned earlier. It doesn't seem that it's going to be a regulation. It seems like it's going to be a directive. But then, if you have one unified inventory, one of them is advertised on Expedia, which is an OTA, and the other one is on Vrbo, which is just an online platform. So how is that going to be correct?
Yeah, I think you have two things happening in parallel. So you have the the European Commission directive, which first of all, we are quite in support of, because we know that in terms of regulation, the more things are standardized, that's a very good thing for us. We can build product once rather than for 17 different provinces in Spain, right? So supportive of the directive. We'll see what the details come out. In terms of two separate platforms that have two separate entity structures and two separate tax structures. In general, what I would say is, I'm focused on driving the commercial value, and as much as I'm sure everyone would be like so jazzed about us to get on a whiteboard and do like a whole tax and legal entity structure up here, in general, I would say we have teams of professionals that are working it out right now.
Is Vrbo gonna be coming to the city, because you're very focused on locational? Is that?
The way I would look at it is our headpin segment of travelers is families. So if families go there, then we're going to be active and we're going to try to drive production. And what that might mean is that, like, for a metro urban place that you typically think of as maybe business travelers, like maybe that's not a place where we're necessarily going to play ball. But I think for like capital cities in Europe or vacation cities in the US, like Miami or San Diego, like we are laser focused on growing those destinations.
And then we're going to see Vrbo like with share homes or anything.
We want to do business with that. Honestly, when we do the math problem, I'm not so sure that business is profitable in the short term. If you can acquire that traveler and then upgrade them to something where they're spending more money, that probably is, but it's not where we're focusing.
And then last question, like we mentioned that you're coming to Europe. Vrbo, there was not that much, and we talked about that before, like the transition to a HomeAway into Vrbo. Is that going to be more aggressive, you think, this coming months or a year?
I think I would think of it as the suite of brands. Transparently, we're not investing in HomeAway probably a ton anywhere in the world. If you listen to our brand people, the headpin companies, the headpin brands are going to be Vrbo, Expedia.com, hotels.com. And I think that's where we're going to drive bookings, in addition to the third parties that will provide our supplies.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks for having me.
See you here next year.
For sure, I'll be here.
Thank you.